Good morning, and welcome to Daily 15. Today's Daily 15 is titled Plato on Love and Partying. Today's excerpt comes from Plato's Symposium, a story of partying and hearsay, but perhaps most of all, a story of different pictures of love and desire. If you'd like to purchase the book yourself or read along with us online to read the annotations, you can head on over to alifeofthought.com/d15. Or if you'd like to join the conversation, you can head on over to community.alifeofthought.com. Like I always say, my word is not supposed to be the final one. It's supposed to be the first one. And Plato certainly says some things that are maybe worth disagreeing with here. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say. community.alifeofthought.com. With that being said, let's get right into the first paragraph. Come then, said Socrates, let us review the points on which we've agreed. Aren't they, first, that love is the love of something, and second, that he loves things of which he has a present need? Yes, Agathon said. Socrates continues. Now, remember, in addition to these points, what you said in your speech about what it is that love loves. If you like, I'll remind you. I think you said something like this, that the gods' quarrels were settled by love of beautiful things, for there is no love of ugly ones. Didn't you say something like that? I did, said Agathon. And that's a suitable thing to say, my friend, said Socrates. But if this is so, wouldn't love have to be a desire for beauty and never for ugliness? Agathon agreed. And we also agreed that he loves just what he needs and does not have. Yes, said Agathon. So love needs beauty then, and does not have it. Necessarily, Agathon said. So, says Socrates, if something needs beauty and has got no beauty at all, would you still say that it is beautiful? Certainly not, said Agathon. Then do you still agree that love is beautiful if those things are so? Then Agathon said, it turns out, Socrates, I didn't know what I was talking about in that speech. This may all feel sudden and fast, so I think it's best to start with some context. That's why our highlighted phrase is simply when Socrates says, let us review the points on which we've agreed, because I'm sure, listener or reader, I'm not quite sure what to call you. You might be thinking, well, I haven't agreed to anything. But to understand Socrates' point, I think it'll be helpful to get a handle on the context of this conversation. Agathon, the person Socrates is talking to, has just given a speech at a party. And so we should digress for a moment to think about the nature and the context of this party. Plato's dialogue on the Symposium is not set at the Symposium itself in an important sense. Namely, the exchange that we're seeing between Socrates and Agathon and all the other speeches which take place is not one unfolding in the midst of the dialogue. Rather, the Symposium is a story of a retelling of a party, one at which the conversations about the nature of love that we're reading take place. The whole thing is framed, however, by a conversation between a man named Apollodorus and a friend who is asking about what took place at the Symposium, at this party. Yet Apollodorus himself only heard about the party and was therefore able to tell the friend and thereby us, the readers, because he was himself filled in by someone else who actually was at the party. Apollodorus, the person who's relaying all of this to us, and to his friend, was not himself there. He only heard about it through a man named Aristodemus, who did go to the party with Socrates. So, in a sense, the whole dialogue is a kind of hearsay. It's a report from one friend to another, given by a person who was not even at the party himself. And before analyzing the content of the ideas, it's at least worth asking ourselves why Plato would go to such lengths to distance himself from these ideas, right? They're literally through two other people's mouths before the reader, reads them on the page. It's sort of like a literary way of qualifying, of saying, well, I'm not too sure about this. But that's not the only way that you need to understand it. That's just simply one way you might take it. But that aside, at the party, Agathon and a few others have just given speeches in praise of Eros, the god of love. But of course, they're not only talking about the god, they're also talking by extension about love itself, the thing that we do, the thing that we fall into, the quote-unquote fever, although of course some people are going to disagree with calling it. Anyway. And they heap praise on it. Agathon, for example, calls it delicate and beautiful, and claims that it has the biggest share in moderation of all the gods, that it is brave, and that it is wise. Sounds great. After Agathon speaks, however, Socrates comes in with his characteristic mode of questioning and begins to put pressure on the idea that love is all of these amazing things. And like Agathon, we might at first be surprised. How could love not be beautiful and delicate and moderate and brave and wise when it's clearly such an important and not like ugly, right, emotion? This brings us to our underline. So Socrates says, love is the love of something. And second, that he loves things of which he has a present need. Okay, let's get into this. Now, on the nature of love, Socrates' point in this underlined phrase is perhaps the hardest to accept at first, but the easiest to digest once we sort of get into its headspace. Now, this is not to say whether it's right or wrong. That's for you to discuss at community.alifeofthought.com, but just in terms of understanding it and maybe getting into that way of thinking. What he is saying is that love is a species of desire, and that it is essential to our desire for something that we, in the first place, lack it. He expresses this a bit earlier by saying, a thing that desires something of which it is in need. Otherwise, if it were not in need, it would not desire it. On this model, desire is something like a hole in the ground which yearns to be filled, and once it is filled, once it gets what it wants, it's no longer a hole. There's no longer a desire there. It's simply seamless with the landscape. Of course, we might worry that with respect to conditions like health or wealth or satisfaction, it's perfectly normal, and these are examples that Socrates himself gives, for a healthy person or a wealthy person or a happy person to still desire, once they have their health or wealth or happiness, to be healthy or wealthy or happy in the future. Thus, we may begin to think that we found a quick and easy contradiction, a counterexample to Socrates' claim. But he does not think as much. After all, he notes such people have desires about the future. They want to ensure that the things that they do have are theirs in the future as well. And because the future is not yet with us, because they do not have the things in the future, because there is a question of whether they will continue to have them, whether their wealth or happiness will go on, once again, they desire, in desiring their health or wealth or happiness to continue, what they currently lack. Okay, so perhaps there's something to Socrates' point here. Perhaps all desires are for that which we do not have, that which we want. They're wants, after all. Yet this leads us to Socrates' worry about the nature of love and our circled phrase. He says, so love needs beauty then, and does not have it. Bam! Socrates slides the sword into our gut. We've just admitted, right, that we can only desire that which we do not have, that once the hole of desire is filled in, then it is gone. And yet we're also inclined to say that love is for the beautiful, that we love beautiful things, that we love wise things, that we love brave things or people. These are the lovable things. love is certainly not for the ugly or the cowardly or the pathetic, right? Well, now we have a problem. And here is Socrates' point. If love is for these things, if love is for beauty, if it is a desire for them, because of everything that we've just concluded about the nature of desire, then it cannot already have them. Love cannot be beautiful, it cannot be brave, and it cannot be wise. And so we might, with Agathon and perhaps even with Socrates, jump to the conclusion that love is therefore ugly or cowardly or pathetic. That because love is lacking in beauty, and it must be because beauty is lovable and love is a desire, then love is ugly. And what a sad conclusion that would be, right? But thankfully, this is not Socrates' conclusion. After his discussion with Agathon, he describes a conversation he's had on this very topic with another philosopher. And again, just to flag, again, we're seeing this like weird looking back to the past. This is another conversation that we're getting a recounting of in a recounting of Socrates' speech that is told to a friend. Like, there are so many layers here. And one wonders why Plato would go to such lengths. Anyhow, Socrates has had a very similar conversation on this very topic with another philosopher, Diotima of Mantinea, in which she made this exact argument to him. She sort of convinced him, like he has just convinced Agathon, that beauty, love cannot be beautiful because it is in search of beauty. To love, to desire beauty, requires beauty's lack. And this marks the beginning of our second paragraph. Socrates says, "What do you mean, Diotima? Is love ugly, then, and bad?" But she said, "Watch your tongue. Do you really think that if a thing is not beautiful, it has to be ugly?" "I certainly do," said Socrates. Diotima responds, "And if a thing's not wise, it's ignorant? Or haven't you found out yet that there's something in between wisdom and ignorance?" "What's that?" Socrates asks her. "It's judging things correctly without being able to give a reason. Surely you see that this is not the same as knowing, for how could knowledge be unreasoning? And it's not ignorance either, for how could what hits the truth be ignorance? Correct judgment, of course, has this character. It is in between understanding and ignorance." If only we had another 15 minutes. If you'd like to mark up the second paragraph yourself, get a little bit deeper into this distinction between correct judgment and knowledge and how exactly that applies to beauty, you can head on over to alifeofthought.com/D15 to mark up the paragraph. But you'd also benefit just by reading Plato's Symposium. Plato is an amazing writer, so we have to recommend you give it a read for yourself. If you'd like to join the conversation and share any of your thoughts, head on over to community.alifeofthought.com. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.